Support for Audacious with Chion Wolf provided by a generous contribution from Suzanne Hopgood in memory of Frank Lord.
From Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford, this is Audacious. I'm Chion Wolf. Before a song reaches your ears, it has to pass through a body. A drummer's foot is not just a foot, it's emotion, it's force, memory. A rapper's breath is not just breath, it's phrasing, it's cleverness, power. And a violinist's bow arm is not just an arm, it's nuance, it's pressure, expression. Today, 3 musicians explore what happens when technique, access, and adaptation become part of the art. Adrian Anantawan was born without his right hand and most of his right forearm, and he plays violin with a custom bow adaptation that he calls the spatula. And rapper and producer Pheez became a quadriplegic after a diving accident, and then totally rebuilt the way he writes, breathes, records, and performs. But we begin with Brimblecom Jr. He lost his left leg to cancer, returned to the drums with a prosthetic, and turned a very hard chapter of his life into a whole lot of help for other amputees. Here he is on those early heady days of falling in love with the drums.
I got my first drum set, 6th grade for Christmas. But I remember I also got for Christmas that year these headphones that were like also a transistor radio. So you could get the radio. And I remember this is 1988. So the first time I tried to play along to a song, which is how I learned to play the drums, a new single on the radio, Angel of Harlem, U2.
Ooh.
Which is that's my favorite U2 song and one of my favorite songs. So that's the memory.
So, okay, let's hop forward a little bit. You were in a band by age 14. You joined the band Stick at 18 in 1995. You started touring professionally. I mean, your music career is really going in your 20s, and something happened in your left ankle. Will you tell me what happened?
I was in a really terrible car accident in 1999. Snow, highway, jaws of life were used. I broke my back, essentially. Compression fracture on a couple vertebrae, glass all over my body, and all sorts of stuff. But later that summer, I started having this really bad pain in my ankle in the middle of the night. It lasted for about 3 days. Then it went away for months. I got checked out once by the doctor that treated me after the car accident. No, we don't see anything in there. So there was some sort of undiagnosed trauma, but the cancer set up shop in there. So we'll never know this side of heaven what exactly that trauma, what the diagnosis of that would have been. But yeah, I finally got what I thought was nerve damage checked out in 2005 and test. And then it was cancer. We knew there would be some sort of gnarly surgery in the summer. Anyway, and the thing I feared the most was obviously getting the news that the leg would have to go. And then I got that news.
Now, I imagine that you're thinking a lot about mortality and what it would be like dealing with cancer, but I also imagine that there's a part of you that's thinking, damn it, I'm a drummer. This is kind of a tool I need. How much were you thinking about that throughout all this?
No, I was thinking about that a lot. And in hindsight, I would also say, as human beings, we're not all born with the luxury of having legs, or we don't always have the luxury of having legs or the use of our legs throughout our whole lives. And you don't think about that until you can't. When you're a baby, what are the first 2 milestones? First word and first steps. Then you don't think about it till you can't. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, yes, I'm a drummer. I use all 4 of my limbs, but I'm also a human being that walks, which I do that more than play drums. But yeah, no, I mean, it was certainly there. I'd kind of worked out the mechanics in my head. Okay, we'll figure that out with the drums and walking. I guess there's technology that'll make that be able to happen. And yeah, I was right.
The first time you sat at a drum kit before you got your prosthetic leg, what was that like? I mean, did you have a phantom leg? What was that feeling? Because that is not at all how you experience being at a drum kit.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that part wasn't there, as far as drums goes. But it felt good to just be able to sit down and play drums. So no, I mean, it felt great. Looking out the window, I lived in this apartment that actually in Kansas City this was a coincidence, question mark, but my apartment overlooked this park in Kansas City that is a cancer survivors park. How about that? Pretty great.
How long do you think it took for you to feel like at home in your body at the kit again, to the degree to which you could?
Yeah, I lost my leg in August of that year, 2005, and started learning to walk kind of the end of October. So the band was playing a show with the sub that was the end of a tour on Thanksgiving. And so we had arranged that I would get up and play a song, and we'd play the last song of the night. And chemo is accumulative, so you get more and more beat down. But I wouldn't say I felt great that night, but I felt great emotionally. But then it's the holidays, and I played a 3-hour Led Zeppelin tribute show with my friends.
You were Bonham?
I was trying. So that was still an adjustment, trying to not hike my leg up, and sit all funky. But I mean, I played pretty dang well that night and feel like I did John Bonham justice. So by the end of that tour, I was like, okay, I'm still don't walk too great, but like my playing I'm good.
So your prosthetic leg cost $60,000. Insurance covered half. Your band helped raise money, and there was lots of people who came to help you afford the other $30,000 for this leg. After you got it, you could have just focused on drumming and rebuilding your life and going forward with your own stuff, but you decided to start the Steps of Faith Foundation in 2013 to help uninsured and underinsured amputees get prosthetic limbs and care. Why? Why? You didn't have to.
My friends raised all this, and people all over the city and country and world raised all this money for me, which was amazing. And then the next day I was driving around with my girlfriend, now wife, and was like, wouldn't it be cool if we did that again next year for somebody else? And so the seed was very much planted in the need for that. And then also like, oh, well, that was successful. So to answer your question, it was several years later. I was living in Nashville in 2013. We had a brand new baby, and I had been touring and working a lot the year before, in particular, as a musician. It's like, okay, the thing we moved here to do is coming together. Thank God my wife got pregnant with our first baby. And then one day he was a newborn. And I was certainly like, I was kind of in a frame of mind of like, I don't want to leave the house, let alone leave the city for a month or two to go on tour, to be honestly somebody else's side man. Maybe I need to find another job at age 36. And I was at the prosthetic clinic. I was finishing up an appointment, getting something tweaked on my prosthetic leg. And my prosthetist, my doctor, was like, I'm fitting a guy for the first time that just lost his leg to cancer. You want to come in with me and say hi, talk to him for 5 minutes? I think that would help him. I'm like, I would love to do that. I feel like that's part of why this happened to me. Let's do it. And I went in, I talked to him for 5 minutes. I don't remember what I said, but I remember how he was looking at me. And I could see the hope in his eyes. And it was already a really heightened emotional time, brand new baby, all that. And so I went home and I was like, I told my wife, I said, I wish that could be my job. And so I had an appointment again the next day. I told my prosthetist the same thing. He said, well, maybe it could be. And anyway, long story short, he introduces me to the guy that owned the prosthetic clinic, Rob Pittman. And Rob had established a 501c3 nonprofit public charity, but had been sitting dormant. So he had a very good tax-exempt idea to get prosthetic limbs for folks that had no health insurance when they would come in and they were stuck in this catch-22. I just need to get back to work, but I can't get back to work until I get a leg. I can't pay for the leg until I'm And so a nonprofit is very much a business. He was already running one of those, and that's why it was sitting dormant. He was like, we had a couple conversations, and he was like, what if you come on, you take over this nonprofit I've been trying to get going, and let's help some people. So I always say that's the day he tossed me the keys to a car with no engine in it. Said, see what you can do with that. 13 years later, here we are.
And as if that weren't enough, Thundergong. Talk about Thundergong.
Thundergong is really a combination of all of these things. The fundraiser that my friends and I did for me was really the DNA for that. Throw in a little Live Aid, maybe, getting a bunch of people together. And Thundergong is a rock and roll variety show fundraiser. We've done 9 of them now, 9 years since 2017, raised millions of dollars. And one of my old improv buddies and pretty much my best bud and my brother for life, Jason Sudeikis. We came up together doing comedy sports here in Kansas City and have been in each other's lives since 1995. And he was one of the guys that participated in that fundraiser for me in 2006. And so, yeah, in 2017, I was like to Jason, I was like, hey, man, what if we tried to do something like we did for me back in the day, but now for Steps of Faith, and $30,000 is going to help a lot of people, not just half of one leg for me. And so my band, Summer Breeze, we were the house band. He asked Will Forte and Fred Armisen, who are good friends of his and now good friends of mine, who are known for being actors, but also very musical people. I was already close with Winona Judd because her husband was on our board, Cactus Mosier, who had lost his left leg above the knee, like me, and he's her band leader and drummer. And so Cactus and I are connected forever, and he's one of my favorite people in the world. So Cactus and Winona had become close. So we asked them to do it. We had some other musician friends, Madison Ward and the Mama Bear, Matt Wirtz did it. We had Tech Nine here from Kansas City and Chris Calico. Tech Nine is the largest underground hip hop artist of all time, I believe, and unbelievably talented as an MC. And we sold out the Uptown Theater in Kansas City. But yeah, we raised $150,000. So it was kind of like a dream come true.
It's been over 20 years since your diagnosis and amputation. And you went through this as an adult, right? So you have a before and after to ponder.
Yeah.
With all this time under your belt, having a prosthetic leg and still being a musician and finding meaning in these past 2 decades, I wonder what becoming visibly disabled revealed to you about humanity.
No one's ever asked me that. I'm fine. It revealed to me that I'm fine. And everybody's going through something or has been through something or will go through something. I see people all the time where I'm like, I'm a lucky, lucky guy because I'm still here to talk about it. I can walk around and for the most part do whatever I want. So yeah, it revealed a lot of perspective and that I don't have anything to complain about.
When I think about the challenges I've had in my life that are so big, there's been a before and after for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think before that happened, I didn't know that trauma often, if not always, comes with gifts. And now that I've been through something hard, I know that when the next hard thing happens, it'll be fresh hell. I won't be able to be totally prepared for it. It'll still be awful.
Yeah.
But now I know that I can handle it only because I went through that hard thing before. So in that spirit, I wonder, when you think about what you've been through and the gifts that came from those enormous challenges, I wonder how much when you look to the next inevitable hard thing, inevitable, unexpectedly hard thing,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like this prepared you for that?
Yeah, I think so. Like for my money, God is good. And I could have been dead in a car accident in 1999. I could have very much been dead many times over from cancer. So yeah, you want to get through the hard things as fast as possible. That's how I am. But sometimes you have to proceed through the fear and be a lion and walk through the fire. And then you come out the other side better.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, Billy Brimblecom Jr., thank you so much for talking with me.
I didn't know what to expect, but this is really beautiful. You are awesome. You made me cry very hard. So thank you.
We're going out with Goodnight Romance by Billy's band Blackpool Lights. When we get back, meet a rapper who found a whole new way forward after a life-changing accident.
Your talent doesn't leave simply because your mobility left. You still are capable. You still are able. You just have to figure out the way to do it.
And meet a violinist who was born without his right hand.
my bow technique is different than everyone else's. And if the framework of being an artist is to express something different, well, that's an advantage to be different in the first place.
I'm Kyone Wolf. This is Audacious. Stay with me.
Trust the process, even though it would seem to defy all logic. This phase of life that you're going through filled with problems, and I know that it would seem as if you're out of options. Deadbolts placed on every door but no locksmith. Free your mind while you kept searching for solace. Seems impossible, yeah I know, but you got this. Talk about hope when there's nowhere to go.
This is Audacious. I'm Kyone Wolf, and that is Connecticut rapper Corey Lee, better known as Pheez. He started writing raps as a kid in the 90s, inspired by the melodic mastery of Snoop Dogg and the collective output of Death Row Records. He loved how hip-hop allowed him to express himself in ways no other musical genre could. It gave him community. It gave him power. It gave him freedom. Then, right before 9/11, he joined the Navy. He served on the USS Theodore Roosevelt and completed 2 overseas deployments. His life was taking a whole new shape, and he had new, complicated experiences to write about. But in 2005, a diving accident left Pheez a quadriplegic. He had to build a new relationship with his body, his breath, and the future he thought he'd have. Pheez then became more than an artist telling his own story. He became an advocate changing conditions for others. He's worked on wheelchair repair reform in Connecticut, helping push for a first-in-the-country law that requires wheelchair dealers to act faster when someone's chair needs fixing. The law sets deadlines for responses, parts orders, and repairs because a broken wheelchair can mean missing work, staying in bed, risking injury, and losing basic independence. Pheez is also the host of The Super Adaptables, a podcast that brings disabled people's experiences, frustrations, solutions, and expertise to the center of the conversation. I asked Pheez to take me back to the day of his accident.
It was my friend Royale's party, and we had decided, hey, we wanted to go to the beach. And a lot of people, which I found out afterwards, didn't even really want to go. So me and my fiance at the time drove out there, and I was talking to my friend, a shipmate of mine named Doug Preston, and I said to him, I was like, you see anybody drowning? And I was joking when I said it because I came out of the water. He was just scouring the beach. And he said, there's somebody go Lee, because that's my last name. And so I ran in the water on some like Baywatch, David Hasselhoff type stuff, just being goofy. And I jumped in the water, and it was more shallow than deep. And I broke my neck on impact in that moment.
Were you conscious to see what happened?
Hyper conscious.
Oh.
By that time now, I'm face down. The only thing going through my mind was like, you're going to die today. And that's it. I could barely breathe. I have salt water like in my mouth. And in that moment, in all seriousness, I said, God, please save me. And my body turned enough where I could breathe. And then another friend named Reggie, he said, yo, Pheez, stop playing. And then he ran, he grabbed me, he dragged me to the shore, and he saved my life. And I was just there on the beach, panting, could not breathe because my diaphragm could not expand. And then I heard the ambulance come. They brought me up on the stretcher. I went to the back of the ambulance, and I still recall saying to myself, like, yo, I've seen this a million times. They're going to cut your shorts. They're going to take off your shoes. And I just bought it. Like, literally, I bought the swimming trunks probably like a week before that. That was all my thoughts. So then, they're asking you all these like serious questions, like, what's your full name, address? I'm like, man, listen, I'm like dying here. And that was it. Woke up 3 days later from a medically induced coma with my family by my side. And then they explained to me the severity of my injury.
What are you able to move now?
I'm only able to shrug my shoulders, and I can hold up my head. So there's a metal plate in the back of my neck, and there's rod going through the front of my throat. Because other than that, my head would be like slumped over. So yeah, I can only shrug my shoulders. But I'm thankful because I'm not on a breathing machine anymore, not on a peg feeding tube. I can eat what I like, albeit I have to watch my weight though.
I want to know what role music played in the aftermath of this completely life-changing injury.
For starters, I actually like stopped rapping. I like quit. I just said, what is it that you're going to be able to rap out? Because most of the time, especially hip hop, it's about bravado. It's about what I have and what you don't have and why you're such a sucker and this and that and the third, right? You talk a lot of junk. But what God started showing me in those moments was, look how materialistic you are. Without those things, what are you? What can you talk about? And you see so many people crack underneath the weight of financial constraints. If they become impoverished for whatever reason, you lose a job or you get injured and you no longer are able to work. What is your fail-safe? What is your fallback? And I realized, everything that I rapped about, albeit they were aspirational, it wasn't really telling the story about you. And so when I started reconfiguring about what my content should look like going forward, that's when it became more enriching, right? Like a ton of stuff. Like I stopped swearing in my music. Eventually, one day, like if you have kids, like they're gonna go listen to that, and they're like, "Why are you talking like that? You're telling us not to talk like that, and here it is, you're talking like that." So I just revamped everything, and then I started figuring out how to record, and that's what kind of exposed accessibility and why that's important for artists with disabilities to still be able to get in the studio. Your talent doesn't leave simply because your mobility left. You still are capable, you still are able, you just have to figure out the way to do it. And so being able to use an outlet I've been using up until that point for 10 years, right? Like even in high school, I was on tapes, I was on CDs that we were passing out in school and stuff like that. So I've been doing this a decade. Don't throw it away so quickly. You know what I mean? So yeah, music just has been tremendous for me, and it allows me to breathe a sigh of relief when I create.
When I think about you making music after the accident, I think about you feeling multiple things. One is a connection with you before. This is a way of expressing yourself that is super intimate and familiar to you. And I think about how it's sort of a tool to get you onto this next era of your life. And I wonder if while you're creating music in this after you're in, did it feel nostalgic in some way? Did you miss the body that made music earlier? Or was it more of a propulsion thing where it was moving you forward?
That's a very good question. I think there's a little bit of both, because being able to sit back and say to yourself, Corey, like, you went through all of this. Like, you've been deployed twice. You've been a part of a war. You've broken your neck. You've been struck by a car. You've gone through so many different things, right? That's the story for maybe later. But, I've experienced a lot of death, right? Or close encounters with it. So with the music, what it's allowed me to do, especially in some of my first body of work, like my album 13th Year, I got to catalog 13 years of what I had been going through, from the time I got hurt all the way up and through being married and having children. The younger me before that thought, man, listen, marriage, simple. Never had a problem getting girls. Having children, that just come with the territory. Your siblings got kids, like you're going to be good. And then you get hurt and all that goes out the window. And you're forced to reconcile with the proposal that you may never have any of that. And it showed me my level of arrogance at some points. And I think it's a little bit, there's a lot of hubris when we think and believe that my future is so certain and that these things are going to fall in place for me. And in reality, you don't know that at all. I don't care how much you think on it or you believe you can manifest it. The truth is, you don't know. Tomorrow is not promised to any man. And through the music, I got to be able to see that, and it was very cathartic for me. And it helped me heal in ways that I don't know outside of my faith if I could have done that.
In the back of my mind, a lot of what ifs. If I didn't break my neck, I could walk again. Still be in the Navy, close to retirement. Norfolk short duty or I'm on the ship. Maybe deployed overseas in a foreign whip. First class.
I was curious about what changed inside the process of how Pheez makes music. How does he rap now that his breath is limited? How does he record and edit when he can't use his hands? And how does he write and memorize lyrics now that pen and paper are off the table?
Yeah, so one of the first things I thought about was, man, you are hooked onto a ventilator. That means, you can't expand your diaphragm. You're going to have trouble like just breathing and having control. And so there are little things that I do to prep for that. So in the beginning, what I used to try to do was hold my breath for a minute. I'm like, if I can hold my breath for a minute, then, when you're rapping, you just have to pick the parts where naturally when you rhyme, you can just know what you're doing. Your body knows what it's doing. And then when I can't do it, I've created it as more like a style. So if I rap and I get a little bit lower, it kind of embellishes the line itself. You know what I mean? Like if I say, yeah, I'm breathing on beats, that gives me a chance to breathe while at the same time creates this like cool effect. But I know for me, I'm just like, I get to breathe. So that's one. My recording process at home, once my headphones are on, I take these, obviously your viewers can't see it, but I have controls in front of me because I control my wheelchair with a joystick and tap a button on the side to cycle through some menus.
Using your mouth.
And prior to this, I always put pen to pad, was always writing. I will write and rehearse it so much. Give me like a day or two, I have it, almost like up to, I call it game speed. Like there's one thing to practice, that's one level that I do, then you scrimmage and then it's game time. So because I can't just get up and jot down ideas, I'm forced to remember them. So if it's 1 a.m., 2:45 a.m., I'll sit there and I'll just keep rehearsing it. And you might find yourself in a predicament where you can't just jot it down. And so what are you going to do? You'll lose a lot of ideas. So if you train your mind to memorize and remember, it's easier that way. So when I go into the studio, I don't have like time to waste. And I'll go from song after song. And then, that's how I take care of recording.
When people admire what you've been through and how much you pulled through, what goes on in your body when you hear that, both in terms of like, yeah, I did, and also what else was I supposed to do?
I take that perspective very seriously because, there's great bouts of depression and frustration and anger. So for me to claim and say that I got through it because I'm so strong would be false. I'm only as strong because, Philippians 4:13 says I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. And I believe that wholeheartedly because, when I was in that water with the prospect of dying, I couldn't call on Corey. I couldn't call on anybody. I was muzzled by water, right? And being able to have the opportunity to say, God, please save me, as opposed to, yeah, man, like, the universe is, I'm pulling stuff left and right. I could not do that. I could not accomplish that. So I always want people to see a reflection of Christ ultimately when they see, my strength. I think God gives us a measure of strength and character and stuff, but ultimately I give him the glory for it because without him, this would have been the worst. When you know for certain that I struggle in so many areas and people just think that because physically around me, it seems all together. have a beautiful family, a beautiful wife. There's an existential force guiding me and guiding the people around me, bringing them into my life for a particular reason, because my struggle may not be shared with everybody, but people can learn from it. So I just want to be an example to them of, how to go about appreciating your day a little bit more, appreciating the people that's in your corner, looking at the person that's around you and inquiring to yourself, I don't know what they're going through, but I hope that I can do something to put a smile on their face and encourage them. And ultimately, that's really what it's about for me.
Pheez, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We're going out with his song, 3 Wise Men, off of his album, 13th Year. After the break, Adrian Anantawan was born without his right hand and became a world-class violinist. He's also a teacher and an advocate for musicians with disabilities.
Put people in the same room with a mission, and anything is possible.
I'm Kyone Wolf. This is Audacious. Stay tuned.
He said whatever, just believe, don't let him tell you different. Similar diagnosis, but look, my toe is wiggling. Plus I'm moving down to Florida with a couple friends. Mom was tense, I won't pretend like I wasn't nervous for him. He showed me independence was possible, gave me hope for life beyond this hospital.
This is Audacious. I'm Kyone Wolf. The performers you've met so far became disabled as adults, but our next guest has a different story. That's Adrian Anantawan playing a Bach partita. He was born without his right hand and most of his right forearm. Unlike Billy and Pheez, he didn't return to music after his body changed. He grew up discovering music through the body he had from birth. And as a kid, he chose one of the most demanding instruments there is, the violin. To play, Adrian uses a custom bow attachment on his arm. It holds the bow in place while Adrian controls the movement through his upper arm, shoulder, and body. He calls the device the spatula. Now, the adaptation is just the tool. The artistry is all Adrian. His mastery of the violin has taken him to stages around the world. He became an educator and a disability inclusion advocate, devoted to expanding how people think about technique, beauty, access, and belonging. So, how did all of this get started?
My parents say that I started off as a percussionist. And they told me the story when I was first born, missing my hand, that they were worried to present me to my grandmother, who is from Chinese culture, because in the elder generation, disability can be seen as some type of curse upon the family, very folklorish type of thinking. My grandmother meets me for the first time. She's from Hong Kong. And she says, there's nothing wrong with this baby. He laughs, cries like any baby. He needs a little bit of exercise for his small hand. So my grandmother goes to the marketplace, gets a silver bracelet with bells attached to it. And whenever I was shaking around in the crib as a baby, I would have this bracelet on my small hand. And every time that I shook that hand, it would make an interesting jingling sound. And it was thus encouraging me to exercise my small hand. My grandmother told my parents he's already working on his biceps. and also, like, in a very practical way, just trying to create some type of muscle balance between both of my hands. But I think that was sort of the first instance in which I probably intersected with music and also this idea of music having the capacity to humanize us in a way that can be different with societal or other people's attitudes on what disability is.
How did you decide to start playing the violin of all instruments?
I think that it was because of two things that I started the instrument. One was watching Sesame Street, and there was a man with a disability named Ishchak Perlman who played the violin. Struggled to get up the stairs because of his polio, but played the violin beautifully.
Those steps. You know, some things that are really easy for you are real hard for me.
That was number one. And number two is that my dad had played the violin as an amateur as a kid. So we had an old instrument lying around. And so I heard the instrument and thought it was a very beautiful sound. So we went to various teachers to see who would accept me as a student. Eventually, one did. And we worked on a lot of like pizzicato, which is plucking the violin before using the bow. Then I had my adaptation for the bow made at a pediatric rehabilitation center called Holland Bloorview in Toronto. And it was a big hack with the prosthetics department and my parents, where we created a plaster cast that had sort of a tong at the end of that cast to hold the bow. But a lot of it was reused materials, like the bottom of a shoe. They used welded aluminum for the bow attachment and Velcro. And it just gave me an equal playing field. It became a voice for me that allowed me to connect to the world in a way that I hadn't previously, through friends in an orchestra, through just self expression of emotion, to something that felt technically challenging and rigorous that I could problem solve as well. And I think just very early on, all those things were present to a point where I was motivated to continue practicing and developing as a musician to where I am today.
When one is learning an instrument as a child, especially, you never know where your confidence is going to land. Maybe it's just in your wiring as a person. You're like, I'm going to figure this out, even though I sound super squeaky right now. But you having, needing attachments to your arm and all these different materials to make this balance work. As you were learning this instrument, what did your confidence feel like in you? Did you feel like, oh, I'm going to show them that I absolutely can master this instrument, or I can get really great at it? Or were you like really struggling against the condition that you were dealing with?
Yeah, the confidence aspect comes in twofold. I think number one is that when we all start making art as kids, there isn't a sense of shyness about it. You just sort of make something, you get messy, and it's just pure fun and expression. So I think I have that type of early relationship to music making, one that didn't feel like I was doing it for an outside observer, just purely for myself. I think the second thing is that like violin was an equalizer in terms of like it's not how I look anymore, which was like a big deal growing up as a kid, and that did affect my confidence throughout just navigating life to how you sound. And so that was the same as anyone else in an orchestra. And I think that that intersection of music just helped me create a sense of self identity that was unique and yet also providing a platform which I could feel the same. So it was sort of this confluence of both because it meant that, like, maybe confidence and belonging are two related words in terms of how at least belonging, sense of belonging, whether it be within self or within a group, can create and inspire a sense of confidence and perhaps a different way of saying it is just agency and intention, and knowing that I could make choices that would affect meaningful change in the instrument, in the expression of myself or group, knowing that these things were all building towards something positive and the goal to make something beautifully expressive.
You were the first artist with an amputation accepted into the Curtis Institute of Music and the Yale School of Music. And this is where hundreds of people come to audition. They accept a very small number of people. And in rooms where people spend their whole lives trying to hide weaknesses, I wonder what it was like for you to arrive very visibly different from the start. Were you thinking not of that at all, and it was still you were still so focused on the music, or was there any sort of tension in you in that moment for those auditions?
I was fortunate to come into these spaces just centering as much musicality and understanding of the instrument as possible. I think that like people who did see me audition again, it's like they obviously will see that I'm coming from a very different perspective of bow technique. And I think from their end, like from Curtis or Yale, it was a matter of like, does this person have the potential to make an impact upon the field? And I know that like both schools, they have programming in which like if you cannot, play in an orchestra, or if you can't, play chamber music, or be with peers, that you have this sense of belonging of like, okay, I can hang with these folks, then I don't think they would have accepted me, because then first of all, it's not great for the organization or the institution, I should say. But it's certainly, I think they were very being compassionate. It's like, what is best for me as well? Is this an environment that I would thrive? And I'm glad they accepted me, because I think I've always done well in environments where I'm exposed to people who are beyond my level of capacity and technique. And I think that is something that is part of at least just how I'm wired to, is what you were saying, to really continue to strive for what is better, not the best, just what is better, and continue that journey even to this day.
Adrian's adaptation opened a larger question for him. How do more musicians get access to the kinds of rooms he's in? At Berklee, he helps answer that question through the Music Inclusion Ensemble, where disabled and non-disabled musicians rehearse, collaborate, and perform together. I asked Adrian what those students have taught him that conservatories couldn't.
I think the biggest thing I've learned, put people in the same room with a mission, and anything is possible. Just having people in the same space who all love music, no matter how messy the process is, it's something that feels joyful, and one that is transmitted through the performances that we have at the very end. Yeah, so I would say that surprises are that like how much can be worked out just by being present. And it's not like something that one can be paralyzed in the details of how to accommodate for every single tiny thing before you get to the space where you're putting people together. Almost like you have to start with the space first. And then inclusion is really just supported by methods and techniques that allow us to do this work better, because it's an ongoing journey, and people's disabilities will present themselves in different ways as we continue moving forward. Like we have a musician who's blind, for instance, and memorization is, I think, one of the biggest challenges. So what I learned is like we need to have multiple formats, like audio. We have to give them the digitized file that they can play around with on the computer, and then time in order to learn the repertoire. And it's okay if like that musician is not playing in like the first 25% of the rehearsals. They just sit there, absorb, and then like sort of get there eventually. But that's being included, that's being present. And, from a college perspective, like if someone's not participating for 25% of the class, that wouldn't be great, but they are, just in a different way.
Back to Itzhak Perlman, you were able to play and work together, and he said this about you.
He's got a disadvantage when he plays, but he's not having any. He's just going for it, and that's very important.
And I'm curious about what relationship you have to the word disadvantage.
Yeah, it's all contextual. What are our advantages or disadvantages based upon the space that we're in, physically, our time of life, even like just the things that surround us, like our tools versus the people around us. I've had tremendous advantages from a non-physical perspective, like parents who decided that music lessons were important, to having the privilege of going to these so-called elite institutions and sort of building opportunities from there, to now being, in a place where I can do work around the world. Those all feel tremendously advantageous. And I think the disadvantages aspect really just comes from, a sense of it's hard for me to hold two things at once at the grocery store, things of that nature. Sometimes it's this normal life that sort of, oh, this could be easier with two hands, but rarely is it the case that I'm incapable of doing most things in the end. So that should be just something that people can take away. It's like you could get away with most of life with one hand, with the exception of maybe playing the violin. But, to be honest, that worked out fine anyway. So, yeah, I don't know. I think disadvantage is just perspective and attitudes, whether they be for yourself or upon other people. And then understanding that some disadvantages can completely flip into advantages in their own ways. Like I am feeling like having limb difference in playing, just from a purely musical perspective, means that like my bow technique is different than everyone else's, which means that like the way that I produce sound from a completely artistic capacity is inherently unique. And if the framework of being an artist is to express something different, well, that's an advantage to be different in the first place. So it's like we talk about, folks with disabilities having disadvantages, but I think that's all contextual. It's like, in what spaces can these identities actually be utilized in ways that can help advance us as a society or give us a better perspective of what it means to be human?
And this one's a little weird, but we love weird on Audacious. If your violin could speak to you, what do you think it would say to you?
Just continually be patient. There are times where the instrument does not sound like I want it to. And inevitably, it gets there in terms of the process. I think, just like continued encouragement that it might not sound good now, but just wait.
I'll come through for you.
Yes, exactly.
And if it could understand you, which it may, it does understand you in many, many ways. But if there is some message you could send to the soul of your violin, what would that message be?
Oh, well, I'm not the only one. Violence will last far beyond my lifetime, hopefully. I think that's similar to mission in life. Like I'm just one passenger along this journey of hopefully disability advocacy and classical music, and a very small piece of it. So I would say to my violin that there's a universe out there that's still to be discovered.
Well, Adrian Anantawan, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
We're going out with Adrian playing a movement from the Third Brahms Sonata. Audacious is always lovingly produced by Jessica Severin de Martinez. Meg Fitzgerald is the Senior Manager of Projects and Radio Programming, and Robin Doyon Aitken is the Deputy Director of Storytelling at Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford. If you like this episode, check out our show about adaptive technology, from smart canes to AI tools to mobility devices that can change what independence looks like a self-balancing wheelchair that can raise a person up to eye level.
It's the first time since my accident that I don't feel disabled. It just gave me a level of ability and control that I hadn't had in those 3 years.
Find them on your favorite podcast app. Stay in touch with me on the socials at Kyone Wolf, and you can always send an email to audacious@ctpublic.org. Peace.